Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
Yep, you gotta exaggerate certain words and stuff for audio interest.
Yeah,
because I have nothing else interesting to say, so I'll just be playing with tempo and stuff.
And we're trying to get on, prime time radio. So,
yep.
Good evening. I don't know why I went with like the Hey Wilbur shit, but
yeah,
that's my radio voice.
I was thinking that guy from Lost in Space, the creepy one, Vincent Price.
Oh yeah, fuck. You're an asshole for making me remember Lost in Space. But yeah, welcome to the show. If you don't know what the show is, every week me and Steve get together, tell each other random shit that amuses us. A lot of times history, but there's really no restrictions on it, and I'm going to prove that today by going to...
Pushing the limits.
No, by not pushing the limits, by coasting. I'm going back to one of my favorite break glass in case of just lazy and don't have any ideas. We got a creepypasta today.
Sweet. That'll actually go really well with my stuff. So
cool. I haven't done it since November, so I feel like we've been on a good stretch, especially in 2019. I think we've had some really good shows, and I said that can't be right. So we're gonna have a really bad show today.
Whoa! This is going way too smoothly.
Hang on, yeah. We're picking up momentum here. We can't pull that break. So if you don't know what creepypastas are, they're short horror stories. Sometimes they're short, sometimes they're way too fucking long. This one is bordering on way too fucking long. And like most of them are pretty bad. But I always try to preface these by pointing out, like, I'm not making fun of the author. I say it every time. If you've ever written anything ever, you've written something bad and unintentionally funny, and that's all this is we're just having fun with some of these stories. And my dog doesn't believe
Your dog's
me.
Like, fuck no, you're terrible, and we think you're terrible, and you should be...
Writers are useless. But yeah, so like, and that's in the case of this one, it's actually pretty. God damn it, she will not stop. Always when we're about to fucking do the show, I hate her.
Mine does it halfway through the show. She doesn't bark. She just runs in circles right next to me on the hardwood floor.
Well, my dog started this thing where she really wants to be in my room all the time, and today the answer is no to that. You can't be in my room right now, and she is not happy about it. But anyway, so like some of these stories, like this story is especially kind of, I have to say it is poorly written, but it was like originally taken from like a 4chan post from way back when. And they did a lot of weird things on the 4chan boards. They still do.
Right.
But just how it's structured. So instead of like laying out all the like details of the story in a coherent paragraph, they list all these details by bullet point and in incomplete sentences. So it's
helpful. Yes.
So it's like I have to like decipher from this weird fucking list. This person's a 16-year-old black kid with family in Alabama. They own a farm in that area, and well, the family owns a farm down there. He's from Chicago. The writer is from Chicago, and like his family teases him as like this city slicker kid. Oh, and yeah, it's weird. Like it offers details like the family has a shotgun. And it's like, of course they have a shotgun. They're in Alabama. Like,
by law, they have a shotgun. Yes.
So they basically, it's the 16-year-old from Chicago. He goes down to Alabama where he has family. They have all this land and they have like some woods next to their farm. And they decide to go camping there. I'm going to say right now, there's a lot of profanity in this story. Like that kind of teenage overuse of profanity where every other fucking word is fuck, and I relate to that, so I give the writer props for that. Anyway, this story is called Anansi's Goatman story. So I'm sure it's gonna be good, or it's not.
It sounds good. I mean, I'm hooked already, and we're not even into it yet.
Right.
You've been talking it up so much.
All right, let's start, I guess. So they're already out in the fields playing. They're playing football at this point, but the night of camping has begun, from what I've gathered. Again, this is really weirdly formatted, so it's kind of hard to start. So we end up playing football. Dicking around with me, there's the white kid, Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. In total, there were 5 girls and 6 boys. We all were around 15 to 17 years old. We ended up just dicking the day away. He uses that a lot. And like any,
he dicks a lot of stuff.
Like any guy, just dicking around. So we head back to the camp and pulling out some stuff for a campfire, even though the trailers both had kitchenettes. Tanner says that his family's property sits up against my uncle's. He wants to run home and ask his dad if he can come out camping with us. My cousin Rooster says he's going to go with him since it's going to get dark soon. One of the girls also wants to tag along. It's about 7 o'clock and it's starting to get pretty dark. They take flashlights and take the trail toward Tan's property. The rest of us chill. We make s'mores, drink, and kiss on the girls. Which
gotta kiss on some girls, yes. You don't kiss the girls, you kiss on them. Like, so it sounds like the guys are getting on top of the girls, and then the guys are kissing each other. It's like they're kissing on. Yeah,
you just sort of you sit on their lap and make out with your boy Tanner. Kissing on girls is like, there's a lot of phrases in this story that I want to use in my day to day.
Yeah, in fairness, I've heard that phrase before, but yeah, it's not one that tends to crop up.
But it only comes from somebody who never kisses girls. Like, nobody kisses on girls who actually kisses girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's the smell of ozone again. You could smell it over the smell of the fire we had started. This really nasty, coppery smell, like right after you've had a nosebleed and it's stopped. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that nasty, metallic, back of your throat smell. That.
He may need to brush his teeth more often or something.
I have nosebleeds all the time. I've had them my entire life. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. But, hey. We immediately think that it's some kind of electrical malfunction or someone left a hot plate on or some shit. We search the trailers and nothing is on, and we can all smell it. All of a sudden, we can hear people booking down the path toward us, and Rooster, Tan, and the girl all come running into the clearing, out of breath. And they don't even break stride. They all run into the trailer right by where the fire is. We all get the fuck out of there and into the trailers. They end up calming down. Even Rooster is crying his fucking eyes out at this point. All the while, the fire is guttering lower and lower, so my other cousins say fuck it, and are about to go outside to get the generator out of a shed between the trailers. Tanner goes, fuck no, lock the front door, ain't nobody else going outside. He's been crying too, and his eyes are bloodshot and puffy, and his pants are dirty as shit. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house. His father said sure he could go out camping, but to make sure they were careful on the way back, and that maybe they should take one of the hunting rifles just in case.
As fathers tell their sons.
Right, in Alabama for sure. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before. One of their pigs had come up, ripped up, and half-eaten. They assumed it was just some big cats or coyotes, even though they don't usually fuck with live animals. He had gone upstairs and packed his stuff and told his dad they would be okay without the rifle because coyotes avoid people. So they started walking back toward where we were camping. So Rooster finally stops crying and shaking. The girl already had, but she was just staring out the window with a dumb look on her face. This is a great narrator. Like traumatized friends and look at this dipshit just staring out the window without saying anything. He says they had gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they started to hear shit in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first what the fuck it was. The girl says that she heard something in the bushes right off the trail, and they all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing back in the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said they shouted at him and told him that he was scaring the fuck out of them and what a dick he was.
Guess that's what kids say to strangers, is you're scaring the fuck out of us.
You dick. I think that's why I like this story and why I picked it, is like what little... I haven't read it all, but reading the starting of it, like, it reads like a story I would have wrote at 16. Like, if you had forced me to write a story, like, I would really half-ass it. I would swear throughout the entire goddamn thing. So he says that's when he realized that the guy was facing away from them. So they keep walking and they start smelling the nasty coppery ozone smell. They say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side and it's a dude standing in the forest, backwards slightly closer to the path. So now they start power walking and Tan keeps going. I should have taken the fucking rifle.
I hope like literally power walking like those people do where they like pump their arms way too much and...
Right.
Straight-legged striding, yeah, that kind of thing.
Right. Because power walking I don't think means what they think it means. So anyway, as they're telling the story, the smell is still super strong even inside the cabin. They say that after they started walking faster, a kind of low gibbering had started coming from both sides of the wood. And as they started booking it back to the trailer, the girl said she had flashed her flashlight out into the woods to the side of them and had seen something jerking itself through the woods.
I hope he means what I think he means.
I don't think it does. I think this guy just didn't give a shit when he wrote that sentence. The gibbering just got louder and louder, and when they could see the light from our campfire, something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the track. And they had just flat out ran as hard as they could to the trailer. So we're out in the fucking woods, and we're assuming at this point it's some rednecks or some shit trying to fuck with us. That is such a Ben sentence. Like, I can't believe I didn't write this.
Maybe you'll get to the end and you'll be like, by Ben, but son
Holy
of a bitch.
shit, yeah. All of a sudden, my other cousin, Junior, starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid that was telling him about the Goatman or some shit. We promptly tell him to shut the fuck up.
Well, okay, that part I get. Yeah, that yeah.
Because we don't need any spooky talk right now.
Okay, well, yeah. He had me, then he lost me. We don't need no spooky talk right now.
I like this whole setup for the story. He's like, hey, I heard about this Goatman, and they're just, shut the fuck up, Junior, you dipshit. But he just keeps going on and on about how it's the fucking Goatman and how we're in his woods and blah, blah, blah. Now, at the time, I had never heard of this Goatman or any of that, but then a couple years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had a Menom, I don't know what that is, for a roommate, and I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a fucking man with the head of a goat, and he can shapeshift, and he gets among groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo, and it's bad mojo to even talk about it, and even worse if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16, so my cousin is going, the Goatman's going to get in and fucking get us. The girls are all terrified, and my cousin and I are all fucking trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies or if it's some animal. Man, you know what? I said a lot of these are poorly written. I love how this is written. This is perfect. So all of a sudden, the smell just goes away. Like, to this day, I haven't even experienced anything like it. Like, usually smells fade away or lessen. It just literally was there 1 second and then not the next. So it's after an hour, making it around 9 or 10. We stopped shitting bricks enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. We figure it was just some assholes trying to fuck with us, so we don't go back home because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or some crazy shit. Nothing else weird happens that night, and we stay another night, and for the main part of the night, nothing happens. At about 1 in the morning, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. As someone is finishing some spooky story, I don't remember what about, the smell comes back. It's so fucking strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting on a night they were drinking. I'm sure that's why.
And I like that it's literally vomiting instead of the figuratively.
You know, there's a lot of that bullshit vomiting out there. A lot of people say, I got so sick, but it's like, oh yeah, not like this girl.
This one was literally sick.
I stand up, and you can actually feel how clammy the air is. I say we should get inside, and this isn't right. We should have just fucking left. We all go back inside, and we're standing around. My cousin just keeps going on about how it's the Goatman, and my cousin Rooster tries to shut him the fuck up. And all the while, I'm just feeling that something is wrong, and I can't figure out what the fuck it is. We end up sitting in there for a while. The smell is just as strong, and we're terrified and all huddled in this camper. We end up cooking brats for everybody because nobody wants to go outside.
Which is what you do when you're huddled up and terrified. It's like, oh man, something might be trying to kill us. I want some brats.
Yeah, someone call Johnsonville, please, so we can calm down and think things through.
In fairness, as a true-blooded fat ass, I can eat some Johnsonville brats any time of the day.
Yeah, especially if I'm scared. I'll eat fucking 4 of them. It's one of those packs with 4 brats. He's pointing out. He's breaking down the details of what he bought from the store.
There's 13 of us, but we have 4 packs, so we have to divide them like this, and that leaves us 1 left over.
Yeah, this guy likes his math. It's one of those packs with 4 brats. We have a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everybody a hot dog. I get mine. After a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get another. He starts grumbling about how I get 2 brats and everybody else only got 1, and I look at him like he's fucking stupid. I tell him that everybody only got 1 because there are only 12 brats. If he wants more, he should open up a new pack and cook some more. That's when the girl that had been out with Rooster and Tan just starts screaming, "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, get it out!" She's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on the cousin standing up what the fuck is wrong. Me and him both glance around the room, and then I feel my heart fucking sink. I run the fuck out of the cabin, and the girl runs out with us. The trailer door is banging against the side of the trailer as everybody books out of the cabin. One of my cousin's friends asks us what the fuck was wrong. I start counting us. There's only 11 now. If you don't remember how many there were initially, I don't either.
I could have sworn they said like 5 girls and 6 boys, which is 11, but that's okay. We'll let it go. Yeah, okay. Yep, you're right. I just went back to check. He totally said that. See,
So there's
also, I just have to, because we're pointing stuff out as we go.
This is just constructive feedback. For sure.
If you're hiding from something that you're afraid of and you're inside and somebody's missing, why would you be scared and run outside?
Once it starts banging on the hiding place, like the only place you feel safe. This is horror movie shit where it's like the only place that's safe is right in their domain.
Quick, into the woods.
All right, so there's only 11 now. That could mean anything, since they can't keep track of the details here. I'm going to assume one person's missing, but unless they say more. Anyway, I shit you not, my cousin verified. There had been 12 people in the cabin, but being that everybody didn't really know each other well, nobody had really noticed the whole fucking time that there was an extra person. And then I realized earlier that I had kind of noticed something was off. You know how when you're just dicking around, there's my favorite phrase, having a good time that you don't sweat the smallest shit and you don't always keep track of certain stuff? You know, that.
So, wait, now I'm confused because now they're saying it's not like somebody's missing. They're saying there's an extra person.
But then that extra person went missing. Because they're saying there's only 11 now, but there had been 12 before. I don't know what the fuck this is.
Yeah, I'm a little lost, but they're scared. They got scared of brats. That's the problem.
It's the double header of like you're dicking around, so you're already not paying attention, and then you dicked around too hard, and now you're scared, and so now you really can't keep track. And you don't always keep track of certain stuff. I'm dead sure that someone else had been in the trailer with us, and that they had been there for at least a fucking day eating with us. What makes it worse is I couldn't figure out which one because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person / the Goatman. Okay, so he's saying that there was another person in there with the 11 people.
But nobody noticed.
He was the Goatman, I guess, was just eating brats and chilling.
Which is fucking terrifying. It's like...
The girl kept praying to Jesus, and we're all sitting outside. Eventually, we get big-ass sticks and go back in the cabin, but there's nobody in there. We count again, and there's 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door. We explain what the fuck happened, and the girl says that she realized too, and that when he was about to say something, the person sitting next to her had grabbed her leg hard and leaned over toward her and said something she couldn't understand. So we are pretty much scared as fuck as we huddle together and I fall asleep. When I wake up, the sun is just coming up, and half the people are asleep and the other half are packing our shit up. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up, and some people think that we're just fucking around and still want to stay at the trailers. I just want to get the fuck out of the woods. The girl's name is Kira, the one that the Goatman had touched. Anyway, I asked her if she really thinks it was something bad, and she says she just wants to go home and she doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we decide to split up. This is a great idea. The 4 that want to go can go, but I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin and it's my uncle's and I have to lock up. Fucking. All right. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking this shit seriously, and I definitely didn't want to be out in the woods for another night. I spend the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to get the fuck out of Dodge. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle and says he's going to be back, so there are just 7 of us left by 4 p.m.
See, I have to interrupt again because...
Yeah, please,
he's... Unless he's doing this on purpose because he's playing with the amount of people, but he said 4 people left and that there's 4 boys and 4 girls left. That equals 12 again, but there's supposed to be 11.
Maybe that's... Maybe
again,
it's the
I think this
Goatman.
might be the... Yeah, I was going to say that might be his whole point, is that he's trying to make it seem like...
Because it's a shapeshifter.
Our numbers are off
monster.
again, but we don't notice, right?
Yeah,
right.
so...
But it's really just coming off as confusing because you're throwing numbers around all over the place.
Wait. No, it makes sense. Because Tanner left to go get the rifle. So there were 8.
Yeah, but didn't he say 4 left? Because he said, 4, they can leave if they want to. So 4 people left.
Right. So, goddamn, this turned into a fucking math problem.
Yeah. Here, let me get my calculator.
Spend the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys. Yeah, you know, whatever. Yeah, there's
we'll go 7 because Tanner's getting his gun.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Yeah, we're gonna go by what he tells us last. So there are just 7 of us left by 4 p.m. At around 5 p.m., he hasn't made it back yet, and we're getting extremely fucking antsy. And the only reason I stopped begging them to go back was because he went to get a gun. It's about 5:30 p.m. or so when the one cousin that did stay says that the girl Kira is outside. We all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, if she was so fucking scared, why the hell would she come back? And then I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind, the whole time the coppery smell had been gone. Now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them and everybody, and these are the people that wanted to stay in the fucking woods after we had the goddamn Goatman in our midst, is laughing at me and asking if I set this up to scare them. I'm looking at them like, I'm not fucking bullshitting you at all right now. I asked them, why the fuck would I play like that? So one of the girls goes outside to get Kira. She gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kira starts heaving. I don't know how the fuck to describe it. Sort of like if someone with their back turned was laughing without actually making any sound. It was this fact that made me realize there was not a fucking sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. This was like later in September, so it was still fairly hot at the time, but it was super chilly some days too, and you could usually hear big-ass geese honking or some kind of birds or squirrels chit-chatting. I love this guy. Like,
yeah, me too.
I want more stories of like this Chicago guy having to go to the country and describing shit. So I step out the door and tell her to come back in the fucking trailer right goddamn now, which is a common phrase in Alabama. So tell a woman to get back in the trailer.
But it's get with an I.
Get
back in the trailer right goddamn now, you hear?
She backs up into the trailer and we lock the fucking door. We pull down all the shades except one and put a guy there in a chair to watch her. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so. The guy turns to say that she's still there and there's a huge fucking bang on the door. We all jump the fuck up and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The banging is super fucking loud. So now my cousin...
Not like the idea that they're all scrambling around, because there's nowhere... You're in a trailer, so they're just like running in circles in the trailer. Scramble!
Yakety Sax is playing. So now my cousin is holding one of the girls, and the other two are kind of giggling with nervous laughter, and me and the other two guys are shitting bricks. He spells bricks B-R-I-X here for some reason, despite spelling it right earlier.
He wants you to know it's real shit, but figurative bricks.
He's shitting brie. It's a French word. Then we hear Tan. He's screaming, "Let me the fuck in, stop fucking playing." So we go over to the door and open it, and he stumbles in with a rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird happened in the forest, but he had seen a girl, mind you. He said it was not Kira standing there. When he got into the edge of the clearing, she had turned toward him with a slack-jawed look and just stared him down, slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing towards the camp. He said it wasn't until he was almost halfway to the trailer that he realized that she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire, and without even seeing her move, she had been turning, inching closer. He said he just ran the rest of the way back to the cabin, thinking it would open, and when he got to the door and it was locked, he turned and it was about half the distance to the door. He looks around the room and then gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, "You know there are only 7 of us in here, right?" Again, more math. I get that feeling where your stomach drops to your nuts. It had been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where, and then when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it had just slipped right back in. We looked out the window and there was nobody out there, so we recount everyone, and then basically I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier, and everybody says 8. I say, well, how many are here now? They all do the count and then realize there are only now 7 people in the cabin.
I like that they all each individually have to take a specific amount of time to count to 7.
What if there's just one asshole no, Eric is gone. Just makes up somebody. What if they were just shitty friends? They just had one friend that they never noticed. And,
he's literally there. They're counting the 7, and he's in the corner, guys, going, I'm 8.
I came with you from Chicago. Why?
Fucking murder you all in your sleep.
Why are you pretending you don't know me? Quit calling me Goatman. So Tan had brought back a couple boxes of ammo and his rifle, and he had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest because he didn't think his dad would believe him if he said it was Goatman. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours, and that in the morning we can all go back to his place and his cousin will drive us home. Now, I'm really fucking terrified, but I at least feel better because we can be American and shoot the fuck out of whatever it is if it comes back. All right, this is really well written. But then my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks that I'm trying to be funny and prank them, and that she's really getting scared and that I'm not funny. He keeps telling her that I'm not that kind of person, and she says, well, how do we know the girl wasn't just Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the Goatman, how do we know that this is the real Tanner and that Goatman just didn't kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun? So we fucking get into a huge argument about this where me and Tan are like, we could seriously be in danger because at the very least someone has been sneaking themselves into our fucking trailer without us knowing and mingling with us, and at worst something bad is in the fucking forest messing with us. One of the girls is crying and saying she wants to go right now, and we're trying to tell her we shouldn't because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is starting to go down and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while, but we can't really get a station out there with anything decent, so we turn it off at about the time that Tan's cousin shows up. He was 19, I think. At this point, the sun is just barely over the horizon, and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer, and we whisper to Tan, asking if he's sure that's his cousin, and he says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp, then walks in. He kind of glances at all of us and looks a little confused. He says, where's your other little buddy at? I figured she would meet me up at the cabin. Is she a little slow or something? He also asked whether we had been cooking blood in the cabin because it smelled like blood in a hot pan. I like that's a common, hey, you've been making blood? Nice bowl of blood.
Man, I'm hungry for some blood now.
Yeah,
you
got that aroma up. Because it smelled like blood in hot pans all the way up the trail. We were all like, fucking nope. But we asked him what the fuck he's talking about with the girl he saw. He had come down the same trail Tan had been using, and he had come up on one of Yu's guys' buddies. standing in the middle of the trail looking at him slack-jawed. He had asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was just look at him. Then she smiled at him, and he said he kept walking. She couldn't seem to keep up with him and kept lagging a little behind him. He said he asked her if she was hurt or something and if she needed any help, but she had continued to stare. Eventually, he had been walking and turned around to bend in the trail, but when he turned around and went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He had assumed she had taken some shortcut through the woods to our trailer. We tell him the whole story of what's been going on. I half expected him to say we were full of shit, but he just listened and then sat down on the couches in the living room. Tanner's cousin gets back to the girl. He says when she had kept trying to lag behind him, it had kind of weirded him the fuck out, so he tried to keep her in front of him. But no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little behind, and that he smelled this nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. Eventually it got really strong. She had said something really low that he didn't catch, and when he had turned around, she had been right the fuck up on him, and he stepped back from her. It was at this point he asked her if she was okay, and if she wasn't, him to carry her on back the rest of the way, and she just kept staring. He said he had reached out for her as if to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance because she was off to the side of wherever he had put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point we know this shit's real unless Tan is playing a joke, which we can tell he's not because he's almost pissing his pants. So they load up their rifles, we eat some more, and we just kind of, I assume brats, and we just kind of sit around until about 11. To this fucking day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's some huge prank that my cousins played on me and just never revealed so I would shit for the rest of my life. At round 11, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty, gross, blood-like smell, like cooking blood and singed hair. Tan and his cousin Reese get the fuck up instantly and grab the rifles. There's like a half knocking, half clawing at the door, and I shit you not, there's this voice, and it sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to, quote, talk. It says in this halting, weirdly toned voice, "Let me the fuck in. Stop fucking playing." It made my fucking nuts creep up against my body, and one of the girls just starts crying and calling on Jesus.
His nuts move around a lot. Well, things move to them,
and he's very, and his nuts are very aware of the situations. He's, it's like if there's a threat, they jingle a little bit. It was so fucking obviously not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence, and that's some shit that I never realized until that moment. But all people have a certain cadence when they talk. Yeah, dude. No matter what language. All people have a certain kind of rhythm to talking. This shit didn't have any kind of cadence or rhythm. One of those YouTube cats, that's what the fuck it sounded like outside the door. He really wants you to get that through.
He's like, seriously, just pause right now and go watch a YouTube cat.
It literally links a YouTube video of a cat. I'm not joking. So on the page notes, if you want to hear what this thing was supposed to sound like, go to the link. So now I'm in full-on terror mode. We keep yelling outside, "Who is it? Stop fucking around, man." And it just keeps saying "in" or "let me the fuck in" for almost 15 minutes. And then it links the video and says it sounded like this almost, just not funny. So I guess the YouTube video is hilarious.
I'm sure.
Sorry for being on a tangent, but if you can't imagine how this shit sounded, then you can't imagine how fucked up the whole situation was. So then the smell goes away for a while, and for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around in the woods and shit. Every couple of minutes, they'll come back to the end of the door and say something. Finally, when the smell fades away, it's around 2 a.m. right now. Reese says, "Man, fuck this," and opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air and says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." And I assume it was Jesus's rifle.
That's the most southern thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, my dad would totally do that if he was scared. Fire a shot and then be like, "In the name of Jesus."
But you just fucking shot Jesus.
Fuck.
You're aiming up, yeah.
God damn it. He fires 2 more times, and then from the woods, right up against the river across from the trailer, it sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. Then it starts screaming, and it sounds almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like this
YouTube video.
Like this YouTube video of me putting a woman and a cat in a bag.
In a bag.
Like, I seriously have never heard any shit like that, and you can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires over into the tree line and then starts backing into the house. We lock the door and we can hear this shit keening and screaming. Reese says something had come out of the bushes super low to the ground and crawling toward the cabin. He had shot at it. Pretty much that was how the rest of the night went. It was literally screaming constantly for the next 2 hours, and we could hear shit moving out into the tree line, but it never came back up to the cabin until everyone had finally fallen asleep. Tan had been sitting in... you got some?
You just... And this isn't this story specific, because you see a lot of movies and stories, but, like, if this shit was really going on, and there was some supernatural being that you were terrified of, would you go to sleep? Because... Like, I'm old, and I get tired at, like, 9 o'clock at night, but I could stay the fuck up all night if I thought something was trying to kill me.
Right. If you've ever been really scared, I don't know how you just fall asleep.
Like,
but maybe, I could give it, like, if maybe the thing, like, took a break here and there, you might think, like, okay, let's just, try to rest and get out of here in the morning. Anywho, we're almost done. Tan had been sitting in the chair watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else heard or saw this, and he told me 2 days later after the whole thing was over. He said he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped, and he had been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and then lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He just assumed it was one of us, and he had nodded off. Then he said he kind of realized something was wrong, and while pretending to be sleeping, he counted us. There were 9 people in the cabin now. He basically didn't want to try to shoot at the fucking thing in the cabin and have it kill us all then and there, or have Reese wake up and start shooting and then we kill ourselves. He just stayed awake all night pretending to be asleep. He said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing or heave like it was laughing, but then it would lay back down. The story closes pretty weak because from my perspective nothing happened. We woke up and I noticed that Tan was a little jittery and that he was avoiding looking at all of us, but we ate some breakfast, packed up, and started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin and said he'd lock up and bring me my uncle's keys to just start walking and he'd catch up, which I didn't really want to fucking do. We got a little bit up the path, and when he came running up, basically we just jogged back to his house. His cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Tan had gone back to lock up and looked in there. We were too stupid to lock a screenless window. The window was fucking up when he went in there, so the window's been open the whole time. The whole standoff, they left a window open. I'm guessing it had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up and then getting in among us. It walked with us all the goddamn way back to his house, and then he said it lagged to the back of the group and looked him dead in the eyes before walking into the woods. The end.
I would think that you would also, I get teenagers are stupid, so are 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds and whatever.
Yeah.
But there's only 7 or 8 or 9, depending on which paragraph you're reading. I think I could recognize those faces after a while. Like, and then I get, it's like, oh, well, maybe it's shape-shifting as one of them. It's like, then there'd be 2 of somebody.
Maybe this is a hard story to relate to because I'm not popular. But, like, I can always keep track of who's who at any situation,
Yeah.
Like, there's never been like, wait, who the fuck are you? Like,
I was hoping he was going to say, so if sun finally came up and we locked up and all 37 of us walked back to the home. It's like, wait.
That would have been a better ending. And all 12 of us made it, like just some number of like, that can't be right.
You would have thought with all the bricks, the BRIX bricks, that they were shitting, that somebody would have noticed an open bathroom window. Like,
exactly. That was my whole, like, of course, like in this dramatic standoff where you're going out in the name of Jesus and firing off a couple shots, you think you would have the windows barricaded.
Also, it seems weird that the creature would be pounding on the door saying to let him in if he knew it could get in the window anytime it wanted.
And I just have a hard time believing that, like, Southern folk aren't ready for battle like that. I feel like they would be waiting their whole life to fight a Goatman. Go back to the beginning of the story
and be like, we were walking through the woods and we thought we heard something. We all drew our weapons.
Yeah, so I always have fun doing this.
It's entertaining, yeah. I like that it's a creepypasta about a horror story about something that had them shitting bricks the whole time while they were dicking around doing fuck all. But the monster didn't do anything. It
just kind of hung out. Yeah.
It just wanted to hang out. Yeah, I wanted some friends.
It wanted some brats. Some brats and some bras.
It's like, man, I smell like fucking ozone and blood and hot plates. Nobody wants to hang out with me.
Yeah. Those are, I like doing them. I don't do them. Like I said, the last one I did was November, but they are a really fun way to kind of decompress after a few weeks of like throwing yourself into like history stories. It's fun to just riff on something like that, because it's always like either a really silly setup or really silly like details and explanations, or both.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that I wanted to call out that it didn't. Like in the beginning when it's like, oh, we thought we didn't need the gun because it was just coyotes, but it's weird because coyotes don't normally mess with live animals. It's like, yes, they fucking do. That's literally what coyotes do. We have coyotes come in and kill animals where I live in Ohio. Yeah,
I think that was just a mistake in the writing, because he probably meant something like they don't mess with humans, which is kind of true in my experience.
Kind of, yeah.
I've been out in the woods.
Well, but it was when he was talking about like the pig getting eaten, and it's like, well, that's weird because they don't usually mess with live pigs. It's like, yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do. Totally. Yeah, I've been out in the woods, and stuff, and we get coyotes around here. They don't fuck with people. Yeah, they tend to leave people
alone unless they're starving or cornered.
Yeah, and then I have a torch.
Then all bets are off. Yeah. So anyway, no, but there's a lot of stuff. The other one that I remember that I didn't say anything, but I like when it's like, oh, the air literally felt clammy. It's like, well, clammy is a feeling. Like you don't ever not feel like, so if something's clammy, it literally feels clammy, because that's what clammy means. Yeah. Clammy's not a sound.
I mean, I try not to jump on people who overuse the term literally.
I do, because I have not written a story like this yet, so I can pretend. We might have to do that in an episode where we both write our own original creepypasta.
That's a great idea. Just so
we can show that, because then we could show I'll make fun. We'll laugh at these stories and kind of laugh at the writing. But like you said at the beginning, I always want to point out it's not out of like malice or like you're such an idiot, you suck, because
right, if these people as writers had it all figured out, they wouldn't be writing these stories for like a free website for fun. The great thing about the internet is you get to try shit, right, as a writer. And like I said, if you've ever written anything, you've written something bad, and you have to kind of, you have to be able to laugh at it all. But I love that idea. I think we should totally do an episode where you and me both write.
But we got to try to that'd be the hard thing, is keeping myself from like purposely making it corny. It's like, we're going to try to write a serious, kind of corny, because it's a horror thing. All horror has a little that to it. But right. I like that idea too.
Yeah. We'll have to plan for that down the road. Anyway, what do you got?
Yeah, this week is not a creepypasta that I wrote, but it is kind of creepy. So like I said, it kind of fits. So on a warm night in June of 1947, ships traveling near the Malacca Strait between Malaysia and Medan, just south of the Andaman Sea, which we're all pretty familiar with that geography. I didn't totally have to Google it at all. Anyway, these ships picked up a mysterious distress call. It was a SOS, of course, broadcast in Morse code, and the bulk of the message, or at least the middle of the message, was undecipherable. It was Morse code, but it didn't make any sense.
But it was to the rhythm of SOS. That's by the police.
Yeah. And it's hard when you type, when you're doing the ... and then you get into it and you just start
dot.
But anyway, so while it's, started with SOS, it was obviously a distress call. They couldn't make out some of it. But then it ended with this chilling statement. It says, all officers, including the captain, are dead. Laying in chart room and bridge. Possibly whole crew dead. I die. And then the message just ended.
Huh.
Yeah.
I hope he's okay.
Yes. So the call went silent after that. That's not usually the last thing you want to hear on a distress call. Listening posts worked to triangulate the message because, again, this was 1947. They didn't have like GPS coordinates and stuff. And a pair of American ships that were close to the apparent origin were dispatched to, I guess dispatched is the wrong word. In maritime, this is a real story again. I'm not reading like a fake whatever. Ship captains tend to, like, if somebody's in distress, they tend to, if they can, try to help because they understand if it was them, they would want other ships to try to help.
Yeah. If you ever watched Deadliest Catch,
Yeah, I mean, they could hate each other on the docks, and then if they're out there and there's a problem, it's
this
like...
This piece of shit went pot for pot, and then you get that distress call, I gotta save him.
So that's what there was 2 American ships that were kind of in the vicinity, so they headed that way to look for him. Before long, a lookout aboard the Silver Star spotted another vessel. It was a Dutch shipping freighter known as the Ourang Medan. The crew attempted to hail the stricken ship, but there was no response. They saw no sign of activity above decks, and that had to be an eerie feeling given the specific call that they had received. So the captain of the Silver Star decided to form a rescue party instead of just running the fuck away like I would have.
Yeah.
And the crew was soon dispatched to investigate. Upon boarding the ship, they were quick to confirm that the contents of the call had been very accurate. The crew lay dead, scattered all around the deck. The captain was found dead in the bridge, and the rest of the officers were found dead in the chart room. At the radio, they found the body of a man who presumably sent the message, who was, of course, also dead. Their fears were confirmed. There was not a single survivor aboard the ship, which had to be a very creepy feeling. I personally, one of the, like, when you're talking about last places on Earth you want to be, one of them, I love the ocean and stuff, but aboard a random ship that you come across in the middle of nowhere on the ocean with a bunch of dead bodies is not, like, that's not a fun night.
Could be. I mean, there's an entire video game based off that very setup that was a big hit last year.
It's true. So. To make things worse, though, if it can get worse than that, the victims' bodies were all found with their eyes wide open and their mouths agape as if frozen in a sheer state of panic and terror. Their arms were like stretched up from their bodies. It appeared like they were trying to fend someone or something off. Like, it wasn't like they were all just laying there,
A sea bear.
Yes. Damn sea bears.
That's the only thing that could scare a whole crew like that.
True. Even the ship's dog was found dead with its muzzle like it was snarling. You could tell it was like snarling at something when it died. The crew that was investigating also noticed that, like, despite it being about 100 degrees that night, because this is down in tropical Asia area, that it was very cold aboard the ship. Also, the bodies appeared to be decomposing much more rapidly than they should be, given that the distress signal seemed to imply that they had just died within the last few hours. Obviously, the radio man was still alive when he was sending the distress call, and it didn't take him that long. It was a matter of hours to find the ship. It wasn't like they searched for a week. Yet not a single body showed any signs of physical trauma. There was no blood. There were no broken bones. And I can only imagine you find these, like, people frozen in a state of panic, like just dead though, like just staring at nothing, fighting away nothing. Mariners tend to be like very superstitious people. And I get that given their job and the high mortality rate of life at sea. And
like also you say your job, like a lot of people don't realize, like, if you're a sailor of like any sort, you are up an ungodly amount of time sailing, and you just your whole crew's asleep and you're just staring out into fucking darkness and shit, and whatever you're seeing in like the open sea is just like probably fucking with you, like. And
there's all sorts of optical effects as far as like glowing phytoplankton and animal, a big fucking whale swims by your boat, but it's night. There's a lot of things to make you superstitious.
Right.
They tend to be very religious and very superstitious, which
makes sense.
A lot of times are, so if it was me, I probably would have just gotten the fuck back on my little like boat, gotten back over to my main boat and just like radioed back. Didn't see anything. We're we're going home and never sailing ever again. Instead, the captain of the Silver Star decided that they should go ahead and tow the ship to port for salvage, which was probably the correct call. When you find a mysterious ship with dead people on it, you should at least do something with it. So the crew tethered the spooky death ship to the back of the Silver Star and started heading for wherever port. But almost as soon as they began moving, somebody noticed smoke coming from the Ourang Medan's lower decks. So they smartly cut the tether, and a few minutes later, the Ourang Medan erupted in a fiery explosion that is said to have been so strong it actually lifted the ship out of the water. Before immediately, there wasn't much left, so the rest just sank straight to the bottom of the ocean.
Fuck?
Yeah. So the Silver Star filed their report, and then I guess they just continued on their merry way, like, yep, let's pretend that never happened. So to this day, it remains a mystery as to what killed the men aboard the ship and what caused it to explode. But to this day, the identity of the ship also remains a mystery because the legend calls it the Ourang Medan, which means man from Medan in Indonesian. Medan was Sumatra's largest shipping port, and Sumatra's shipping was monopolized by the Dutch East Indies at the time. I know it's a lot to follow. But Medan is in the area of, where I said that the call came from and what they found. It's a strait, in Sumatra. So that all fits. If it's a ship from an area that was described as a Dutch ship and the Dutch did all the shipping out of there, that may, make sense. However, there's never been any reference to a ship called the Ourang Medan discovered in any shipping logs, at all. And then that's something that's possible to be a case, but certainly sheds some doubt on the story.
Which means it was erased by James Bond.
That's what a lot of people, there is a lot of theories behind this story. It's actually a pretty well-known maritime, ghost ship story. Like I say, it's weird that it wouldn't be listed anywhere because even this was about 80 years ago. I said nearly 100 years ago, but I mean, hell, even in the 1700s, shipping logs were very detailed. Right. Countries and companies kept very good record of what ships were going where and when.
The further back you go, the more detailed they had to be because you're getting fucking robbed all the goddamn time.
Right. And you couldn't call it in either. So yeah, I mean, shipping records are an interesting history in and of themselves because that's probably one of the most well-documented human activities over the last couple hundred years. But it's possible that the ship would have just not been on any of those the main logs that you would look for. Even the date of the story, I said at the beginning that this was in June of 1947, but the legend itself, depending on which version you hear, there's a whole range of dates that it possibly occurred, on. None of them give a specific day. Although the Silver Star, the ship that came, to investigate, that is an actual ship. They do have records of it. Although even its logs, don't really put it in the area of the story at the time of the incident.
Oddly, every ship it investigated blew up.
But only after reporting in bad English that they were dying. What's often cited as the first official account of this encounter comes from a U.S. Coast Guard publication in 1954. So you'd think that would actually lend credence to it if the Coast Guard, published it.
Yeah, Americans never believe anything stupid.
No, especially not our government. But that would be about 7 years after the incident. So it wasn't here's a firsthand account of what happened just, yesterday. There was an English language published story in the Albany Times out of New York back in 1948, which would have been much closer to the events. And the article itself cites an article from Elsevier's Weekly, whatever the fuck that is. So there is
favorite magazine.
Yeah, don't make fun of Elsevier's. There were a series of 3 articles that reference the Ourang Medan disaster written in a Dutch-Indonesian paper, which would make sense given it was a Dutch ship in that area. I guess the paper was called De Locomotief or something. But anyway, these articles were published between February and March of 1948. One was in February, the last one was in March. though these articles differ from like the most common telling of the legend, which is the one I gave. In the articles, it says that the ship would have been found about 500 miles south of the Marshall Islands, which are in the middle of the Pacific. Because again, I assume everybody else's geography is as terrible as mine. I had to like actually look all this up.
Yeah, I was gonna say like we're getting to the parts of like mystery stories that's just like I don't like, fucking know where any of this is. Who killed him? What ghost killed him?
This kid, yeah. The point is the Marshall Islands are technically like in that quadrant of the Earth, but they're not close. I mean, they're nowhere near where this strait was. These articles, so the Dutch articles actually mention a single survivor who was said to have been found on a nearby island by Italian missionaries.
So he did it. Busted.
Yes. To jail. According to him, the ship had been carrying a dangerous cargo of sulfuric acid and perhaps nitroglycerin, and that the containers had become damaged and the toxic fumes are what killed the crew, which actually makes a hell of a lot of sense given how they were said to have been discovered and the violent explosion. And it actually would also go a long way as to explaining why you can't find any shipping records of the Ourang Medan. Because they were the kind of things that are very hard and dangerous to ship and are very strictly controlled. So if they were doing it illegally, you don't call up the like transport office and say, "Hey, we're carrying this shit in this boat, and here's what it's called." So that's probably the most likely explanation. Although I think it's interesting that one guy, if they're all dying of fumes and he knew what was killing him, it's like, why didn't more go overboard? Like,
Maybe
you just sit there watching people like, yeah,
and like you described like the dog, like snarling at something. Like obviously a dog is a dog, but like it's crazy to me that would be its response to like a fume poisoning.
Yeah, unless it wasn't actually snarling when it died, and maybe like just the response to the gas made it like. They did say the bodies were decomposing faster than what they would have expected, which is interesting because they're sailors, not coroners. But I don't know how sulfuric acid would, in my mind, me being a dumbass that knows nothing about science whatsoever, I'm happy saying, hey, sulfuric acid makes your body decompose faster. Like, that's just a scientific fact in my mind now.
When I was trying to find a topic for this week's show, this is a little off topic, but I read about like a captain who died at sea, and he had his like wife and children with him, and they basically pickled him. Like they put him in a barrel full of booze. And
oh man, that's such a waste of a good barrel of booze.
Well, it's so the guy's name was like Gray. I forget his first name.
Goose. That's where Grey Goose vodka comes.
The Goose Gray. But it wasn't enough content to do on the show. But I guess like they put him in a barrel full of alcohol and stuff, and then like when they got back to land, they were like, "He's gonna smell fucking awful if we open this."
So they bury him.
So supposedly, wherever he's buried, he got buried in just a barrel of booze.
Oh man, you could tap that and sell it for a shitload of money.
Oh god, it's just fucking gross.
Yeah,
it would be so bad.
I was watching a travel show. I forget which one because I watch a lot of them. And he was at a place where it's a tradition. It was like up in the high mountains out in like Nepal or something. And their tradition when you get up to this village, because it's hard to get to. I mean, it's a like life accomplishment to make this journey in the first place. And people fucking live out there. But you have to do a shot that the shot glass itself has somebody's severed frostbitten toe in it. Like they just keep this pickled toe that was taken from this person that got frostbite, and they like put it in your shot. Like,
can I take like 5 shots first without the toe and then do the toe shot?
Yeah, you'd have to. And I can't remember. I want to say that you have to like take the shot, like take the toe into your mouth, and then like of course spit it back out. You're not eating the fucking toe. Maybe not. Maybe the toe just like is in your shot. But either way, it was fucking and it's exactly what you'd picture. It's just jet black, shriveled up toe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm grossed out. I'm not saying there's not a level of partying that I wouldn't do it, but it wouldn't be at the start of the night for sure.
And my whole point is, well, it's gross, but you can do it because the alcohol, it's a heavy duty booze. It's not like you're taking a Bud Light shot. So I imagine it could be the same with this barrel with this random captain in it, except there's a whole lot more gross stuff in there if you put the whole body in.
Yeah, there's something about the image of like a captain underground now swishing around in a barrel.
Now I'm disappointed I said Gregor's because Captain Morgan, I say that's where that comes from. They literally spiced Captain Morgan.
There's a little captain in it, and then you hit the barrel.
Gross. Yeah. So anyway, and of course, these kind of substances would also explain the random fucking explosion. If there was, especially nitroglycerin
that's right, yeah. So it was sulfur. We were talking about sulfur poisoning before.
Yeah. Anyway, there's also like theories out there that the Ourang Medan could have been involved with smuggling biological and chemical weapons out of Japan. This would have been just after World War II. Mm-hmm. During World War II, Japan did have an infamous Unit 731 that was working on biological and chemical weapons under the command of Shiro Ishii. So I guess it's like possible that they'd be attempting to move these like out of Japan to continue their research. Again, I am far from an expert in any field, and history is one of those fields I'm not an expert in, but I know like sanctions on Japan were extremely strict after the war. Right. We've all heard about like the taking everybody. So even their swords, like there's so many cool, like historic artifacts that got destroyed and stolen because of this aftermath. So it's possible that the government like was sneaking these out because they didn't want to give them up, but they knew they couldn't continue like keeping me in Japan, or they could have been being sold to like another country or, somebody from like a Metal Gear series or something. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. That's the natural progression usually.
Right. Although the links between this Unit 731 and the Ourang Medan seem to simply be like, hey, Japan was working on this, and then the ship shows up and people died in the same like hemisphere as Japan. Because again, I don't expect you to actually do this, but if you were to look up either of these two areas where the legend is, neither of them are particularly close to Japan.
Right.
The Marshall Islands, you'll recognize if you're familiar with World War II naval history, because it is in the Pacific and it was an important, theater or important area in that theater, the campaign there. But it's still not close to Japan. It's like halfway between Japan and the U.S. So I don't know. That's really where I ended with this weird theory that it was biological weapons. I think it was probably the chemicals, because that kind of explains all of it.
I think ghost pirates. And as one half of this show, you need to respect my position.
How fucking cool would it be if we actually found a transcript of the Morse code and they're like, oh, the middle didn't make sense. And then we find out they're simplifying it. It's like the middle didn't make sense because they said Long John Silver just boarded our fucking ship.
Dave
Captain
V.
dead,
Jones.
crew dead. Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
they'd be like, it doesn't make sense. You're like, it makes perfect fucking sense.
Makes sense to me, man. Look at them. They're all terrified.
So it's a story that's maybe true. It's very debated whether any of this actually, it's like any legend where I think it's probably based on truth. How much of it is like, did they find the crew frozen or did they just find a bunch of dead people on a boat?
Yeah.
Like, did it randomly explode or was it like already on fire? That kind of thing. So it's probably like the actual story probably did happen, but was much less like mysterious.
Yeah. Like the explanation you have is really believable to me. But like any kind of legend, like it's also very possible, like kind of the initial things happened and then like it gets conflated with like a bunch of other stories after enough time. And
right.
Then it just
particularly given that there is this long trail of articles that appear all over. There's actually, and from like back in the 50s, so not new, but some like German researcher that was like a kind of obsessed with the story, and he did a lot of work on it too, but I didn't have time or really care to to read it because it's not really the point of the story is that it's mysterious and cool.
Right.
And what I really actually like, I've heard the story before. I was actually familiar with it before I decided to write about it this week. But what I like about it is it's the like quintessential like ghost ship story.
Right. Yeah.
So
like
that's what I got.
Yeah, it's totally like that. Like you find it just a fucking crew completely, demolished.
The ship that nobody knows where it's really from. There's no record of it, but it's the ship itself was actually in good condition because obviously it's a modern story and they found it relatively quickly.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like how is this ship even sailing type ghost, ship story. But just this like random big, I mean, again, you think creepy locations, I think like hospitals, abandoned schools, and then like derelict fucking ships in the middle of nowhere. That's up there.
If you've ever passed by like just a dock, like a big shipping dock in the middle of the night, like that you can kind of see in the distance, like it's fucking eerie. And we've talked about it on the show. Like you and me both love ships and the ocean and stories about it all. We're totally fascinated by it, but there's totally something uneasy about just like, there's something about that setting that just immediately triggers like your sort of paranoia about, irrational shit.
Right. Because it's what I say about most paranormal stuff. It's like, I don't believe it. But once you're out there with nothing else the fuck around,
it's there.
Your brain's still screaming at you saying, hey, you might not believe it, but if it's real, nobody's going to fucking find your body.
Yeah, like it might not care if you don't believe it.
That's why you're going through this. Well, if it was real, we'd have proof by now. And then your brain's like, yeah, unless it's killed everybody that's seen it.
Yeah, unless you're the proof.
Right, that too.
That's what I worry about. Is like I don't want to be first.
I've literally said that before. I said, one of the things that like I don't necessarily believe in ghosts, but they shouldn't even really be scary because there's not a single documented case in history of anybody being proven to be killed by a ghost. But then the very next thought I have is what you just it's like, what if I'm that person?
Yeah, that's totally how I. That's the thing. That's why I can like I can dismiss it all. I can be really kind of. I feel like I approach those types of stories like I enjoy them, but I can be kind of rational about them. But that's also why they're still scary, is because it's like technically anything could fucking happen.
Right. So that's cool, and it gives me like the whole time when I think about this story, it's the classic horror setup too. Like I said, it's very much what a ghost ship story is, but it also makes me think of things like Event Horizon, if you've seen that movie, where you get a distress call and you come across, and then you get on board, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, what did we walk into?
There's a reason that setting works so well in like movies and games and books, where it always starts with like something like like whether it's a ship or whatever, like they calling for help. You try to go offer that help, and when you get there, it's just death,
Yeah. You think, this is a natural thing. It's a normal thing. We'll go save him. And then it's like, oh, fuck. Nobody knew Satan was on this ship.
Fuck, they sent the distress. Yeah. No, that was...
The crew stepped aboard, and Sam Neill is standing there with no eyes.
I think, it's an interesting story, but like you said, like the thing about those types of stories is really just how they play with your imagination. Right. Like you hear the basic story, and then like for the next like 2 hours, I'm going to be thinking about like, well, what else could it have been? Like you just start making up theories, even as like they start making less and less sense.
That's why it's kind of disappointing to me that this one, it's like the story may or may not have happened, but if it did, there's a perfectly logical explanation for it. Yeah. It's like,
God damn
but
it,
people. Still leaves that part of your brain where you're like, but...
Yeah, but what if the logical explanation isn't logical at all? No.
What if they didn't leave carrying sulfur and the ghost put it there?
Yeah, what if the ghost killed him with sulfur?
Although, I will say, like I said that explanation makes sense, but then you would have thought that the rescue crew would have probably smelled something or had some at least ill effects, even if they weren't like in it enough, like it had dissipated enough, like it's still. So I don't know. Yeah, ghosts. It was ghosts.
Yeah, probably. We can always end the show on that note. It was ghosts. And next week it will be ghosts too.
Goatman can sail too.
Well, Goatman was ghosts also. So. But yeah, that's what we got for you this week. We are offering that to you. It's yours.
Count the people in the room right now and keep track. Yeah. And hope the same amount is there next week when you.
Yeah, count your homework assignment this week. Count the people in your life, and if there's one extra, you're in trouble, Jack. See you next week.